Welcome back, everyone. This is Pastor Frank DeMora from the End Times Research Ministry, the author of the book, The Last Chronicles of Planet Earth, which is a documentary showing how the Lord is fulfilling His words in this special generation, the last generation, just before Jesus Christ returns as He promised. Anyone who would like to read this documentary, which I just updated today, September the 4th of 2018, all you have to do is go over to my website, which you see the front page here, and scroll down. You'll see the front and back cover of the book. Right below it is a link. Just click that link and that book will download today for free for you. Most people don't realize, but you're living in a special generation, because the prophecies that I'm going to be sharing with you now are just a few of the many prophecies that the Lord told us would happen at the same time. There was a special generation who would be alive to see the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. We see this without a doubt in Matthew chapter 24, for example, in verses 32 through 34, where Jesus talks about this fig tree, which is symbolic for the nation of Israel, which was born on May 14th, 1948. Listen to what the Lord has to say to you today. Now, learn the lesson from the fig tree. As soon as its branches become tender and sprout leaves, you know that summer is near. So also when you see all these things, you know that He is near, right at the door. Truly, I tell you, this generation will not pass away until all these things have happened. So the Lord was specifically telling our generation that when you saw the rebirth of the nation of Israel, and at that time you would see all of the signs that He gave us in Matthew chapter 24, that generation would not pass away. So, as I said, there has never been another generation who, number one, witnessed the rebirth of the nation of Israel and at the same time is seeing all of the birth-pain signs that Jesus talked about in Matthew chapter 24. And there's other places in the Bible that He also conveys the same kind of message. For example, in Luke chapter 21 and also in Mark chapter 13. Now, for all the skeptics, for all the scoffers, let me just say this. If these prophecies that I'm going to be sharing with you right now were all by themselves, then I would agree with you that the Lord isn't coming back anytime soon. However, knowing what Jesus told us in Matthew chapter 24 about all the signs and the rebirth of the nation of Israel, the prophecies that I'm going to be sharing with you now are very important, because not only are they attached to the rest of the prophecies, which tells us that we're close to the door, or, if you will, the return of the Lord Jesus Christ. So as we look now to the warning about the birds, the fish, and the animals dying off in mass numbers, just keep in mind, they're not alone. These prophecies don't stand alone. They stand with the rest of the warnings, specific warnings from Matthew chapter 24 as well. Hosea, for example, chapter 4, verse 3. Therefore shall the land mourn, and every one that dwelleth therein shall languish with the beasts of the field, and with the fowls of heaven, yea, the fishes of the sea also shall be taken away. So we know what to expect. Mass die-offs in the last days while all the rest of the prophecies are taking place. Now, there's another one in Zephaniah chapter 1, verses 2 and 3. I'm not going to read it all, but essentially it tells us the same thing. I highlighted it in yellow for you. I'll consume the birds of the sky and the fish of the sea. And of course, you'll see it highlighted, the animals as well. So what are we supposed to look for? We're supposed to look for mass die-offs. Birds, fish, animals. Now, look at Revelation chapter 11, verse 18. There's also another part of the prophecy warning. And this has to do with pollution. People destroying the earth. And hopefully most of you have already seen pictures like this where our oceans are being polluted. We're discarding garbage into the ocean. every day. And this pollution is mounting up where not only is it affecting humans, but obviously it's affecting the creatures who live in the oceans, in the rivers, in the streams. Plastics, contaminated drums, all types of pollution. There's a warning in the book of Revelation. And this book is really important for anyone who doesn't know the Lord Jesus Christ yet, because in this book, Jesus tells us what is going to take place on this earth just prior to his second coming. The outpouring of his wrath on the people who flatly reject the message of salvation through his Son by the work that he did for us on that cross. Look at what he says in Revelation chapter 11, verse 18. And the nations were angry, and thy wrath is come, and the time of the dead that they should be judged, and that thou shouldest give us reward unto thy servants the prophets, and to the saints, and to them that fear thy name, small and great. Now look at this. And shouldest destroy them which destroy the earth. And how do you destroy the earth? Pollute it. Definitely one way you destroy the earth. So now that you know what the Lord has stated about these last days, and you see the proof that there's pollution happening all around us, not just in America, not just in China, not just in Peru, but many nations around the earth are experiencing the same thing. The pollution is just part of it. Keep in mind that there are other things coming into play that are adding to the mass die-offs of the birds, fish, and the animals. We're seeing extreme changes in the weather, for example. We're seeing diseases spreading like we've never seen before between different species of animals and birds. If you take time to go over to my website and download my book, there is a section in my book that gives you year after year of the sheer numbers and where these events are taking place of the mass die-offs. There are literally thousands of these reports. If you were to go back and click each one of the reports that I put up for you, you would see a common theme. And those common themes are, for example, statements like, this is the worst it's ever been. We've never seen events like this before. This has never happened before. This is a mystery. We don't understand why these massive die-offs have happened. I'm just giving you this information so that when you go through with me and you see these die-offs, you're going to read the statements and hear the statements made by people who are living through these massive die-offs. Now, I ended with August the 7th of 2018 in my last presentation. I'm going to pick up again from August the 17th, the report that I did not put in my last presentation.
staggering numbers to give you perspective, showing you the toll this toxic water is taking on our sea life. Crews in Lee County have now collected more than 3 million pounds of dead fish from our local beaches. This includes 309 tons of dead fish in Sanibel and an additional 1,400 tons of dead fish in the rest of Lee County's beaches. So what does 1,709 tons of dead fish look like? We're going to come out to the big board to give you some perspective. We did the math to compare this to some things that you see every day. Say your average family minivan. Well, one of those weighs about 2.5 tons. That means it would take about 683 minivans to weigh the amount of dead fish recently collected from the beaches near your home. One viewer reached out to us on Facebook, suggested we equate the weight of dead fish to a Boeing 747 aircraft. It would take about 5.5 747s to weigh the same amount of all that dead marine life that's been collected. And you use your iPhone or your phone every day, right? The iPhone 10 weighs a little more than 1/2 pound. That means it would take 4,000 of those iPhones to equal just 1 ton. So it would take 6,836,000 iPhones to equal the amount of dead marine life that's been cleared from Lee County beaches so far during this red tide crisis.
Residents who live along the banks of one eastern North Carolina river woke up today to a pretty shocking sight.
That's right. Thousands of dead fish along the riverbanks and more were floating in the water, but residents say they aren't surprised to see it. Joining us live now is Edward Shee. Edward, what are you finding?
Yeah, Dave and Sharon, right behind me on the Pamlico River, thousands upon thousands of dead fish floating on the top, sunk on the bottom of the river here by Neville Creek in Beaufort County. It's quite a sight to see, but residents around here actually tell me that it's not actually that uncommon to see something like this out here. According to the Pamlico Tar Riverkeeper, Forrest English, who was out here this morning, the cause of what exactly happened here isn't known just yet, but they do have some pretty good guesses. He told me that these large fish kills most commonly occur due to a lack of dissolved oxygen in the water caused by either heat or nutrient pollution that results in the growth of organisms in the water like algae that actually use up all of the oxygen, essentially suffocating the fish. And while thousands upon thousands of dead fish floating here are unpleasant to look at, for the people in the area, well, they're just dealing with it.
washing up in East Rockaway. Take a look. According to Newsday, the dead fish started showing up Tuesday in the Telfer Boat Basin. Town officials say heavy rain appears to have been filling the salt water with lower oxygen fresh water, and that caused those fish to suffocate.
Warm weather and fresh air. At Malibu Lagoon State Beach, you can forget about the fresh air part.
It's disgusting.
Absolutely disgusting.
Beyond terrible.
That's because of the stench of hundreds of dead fish littering the lagoon. The mass die-off first noted Thursday. Then it continued through the weekend. California State Parks employees, armed with rakes and protective suits, snagging the dead mullets and, no joke, dead smelt from the shoreline.
They're going to bag it up, and we'll take them up to the landfill.
All the dead fish are coming out by the truckload. The big question now, what caused this? Well, wildlife experts think it may have been the weather.
Water temperature is 82, 83, 84 degrees, somewhere in that range. What we've had is many days in a row of warm, sunny weather. Typically down here on the coast, you would have weather that is more foggy and keeps probably the temperature down.
Craig Sapp is the superintendent of the California State Parks Angeles District. He says oxygen levels in the lagoon are right where they should be, but several of the fish have been sent to labs to check for other reasons for the die-off.
It's very specific tests they're taking as far as the water is concerned. It may take a week or two.
In the meantime, the popular beach is not so popular anymore.